Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, June 9th, 2020, and you are watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. My name is Bill Woodcock,
And I'm Jason Booms.
and we have no guest today. It is just us. We're live. Jason, there's not exactly. I mean, what's there to talk about today? Is this just going to be another day of sitting out on the virtual veranda sipping an iced tea?
Yeah, with the absolute paucity of news, I can't possibly see how we're going to fill today's show. But I guess we'll have to, as professionals we are, we'll have to just wing it, I suppose.
As Jason has very aptly pointed out, the face of the world is melting, not unlike the bad guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I believe in many cases it is melting in a good way. I think the number one thing that we want to discuss for a little bit is the incredible turn of events that have gone on in the wake of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, the heightened examination again on the Black Lives Matter movement, of the movement against police brutality, the most recent movement of defunding the police, and the very bright spotlight that once again has been put on race relations, as demonstrated by 2 weeks of protests in countries large and small in all 50 states. Um, Jason, we've been down this road before. I mean, over the past 10 years, with many cases of people being murdered for the crime of being black. Do you get a feeling that things are different this time? And if so, why do you feel that way?
I mean, honestly, that's a great question, yet such a tough question. It does seem as though the level of activism that we've seen as a result coming from the protests, it portends something larger. I'm not certain if that's due to the change in media and the ability to bring into the homes of millions the tragedies that are occurring on many streets. I'm not sure if it's a factor of that we have what appears to be a highly engaged generation that's willing to organize in such a way that it's been extraordinarily impressive. I mean, we saw this in Colombia, where some local activists for Hoco Justice managed to pull off an event that had at least a couple of thousand attendees. I'm not sure if there was an exact number attached to it. I think there was another one in Columbus, Ohio, I want to say, that had about 10,000 turnout that was all run, I want to say, by teenagers. One would like to believe that are going to see some real structural systemic change. I just don't know if the leadership of the country is frankly caught up to what's going on in the schools and the streets of America. We do see some leaders taking note of what's going on and I think trying to express a measure of solidarity when you saw members of the Senate and House Representatives kneeling for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Some of it felt as though they still weren't getting it, in the sense that it looked like an overproduced photo opportunity with Nancy Pelosi wearing the kente cloth along with others. So it comes down to a question of genuine, of authenticity, and of really, what the next step is. I don't. If it wasn't for the folks on the streets leading this, I'm not sure if the leadership will be taking it as serious as it needs to be taken.
Yeah, I, I I could not help but wince at what I believe was what one calls cultural appropriation in extremis yesterday, with Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer,
Mhm.
many people who, of course, have been down with black people for who knows how many years wearing the kente cloth. That was. I understood the message, but at the same time, it's like teaching your grandmother how to use Facebook. It's Are they trying to get it, or is it just escaping them? What I'm a little bit, I have to admit, I don't have much understanding on this topic at all, but I have seen that someone else on this podcast has done a post or two about it. Defunding the police. What exactly does that refer to? Because I believe that there's a little bit of a mindset out there that people think, oh, well, we're just going to have zero police now. But from what little I know, that's not really what it is.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where, and if you're playing bingo at the moment, I'm about to say, from a communications perspective, the because I know some folks are bastards, no. But returning to the seriousness of the issue, it really calls for, I believe, a shift in philosophy, a shift in how we as a society approach conflict resolution, how we as a society approach the idea of enforcing the laws that are in the books, and turning it towards my understanding of it, far more civilian oversight, the ability of a community to remove dangerous police officers from the streets, and thus actually enhance public safety. Putting more civilian officers or employees in the schools rather than give it the feel of an armed camp. And that's my understanding of it. Now, I'm not certain if there necessarily is a uniform or unified perspective on this, because you see the debates. Some folks tend to be taking a bit more of a, I mean, they're saying defund, and you really think, well, they might actually mean defund, whereas other folks are saying, well, we need to demilitarize the police, we need to take them through more trainings, so they have a better understanding of the community in which they live. And obviously there's that going way back, the idea of that, community-based police should live in the communities they serve. And there was a movie that came out a couple years ago about Detroit and the Algiers motel incident. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it was took place essentially during the rebellion of '67. And the fact was made that, you had a lot of cops that were not Detroit residents coming in to not so much patrol the city, but to occupy the city. And that led to a great deal of tension and many, frankly, fatalities and tragedies as a result of this severe disconnect between the police force and the citizenry. So long answer, but it's one of those situations where I think the label has, it's very broad, and unfortunately, I think the Republicans are going to be using this as an attempted wedge issue moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, of course they will, because who does not like police? We have to have police. We can't have zero police. And that's not what I took it. I mean, my understanding of the topic is very much along the line of yours, that we can have policing, but we do not need Army Junior, and we do not need Army Junior where everybody acts like they're in the UFC and they do God knows whatever they wish to whomever they wish, whether it's a young black person, an older white person, as we saw in Buffalo, or anybody else, of any walk of life. But the escalation of policing from standing there minding their own business to we're going to beat the hell out of you and kill you is alarming. I getting back to the original, the first question I asked. I think this has legs. What unfortunately made me feel that way was the first couple of nights in Minneapolis when I saw a lot of people who looked like you and me in those protests, and these were not things that I had seen and during many of the prior protests that have been going on with other police caused deaths. And and I also agree with you in that there's going to be no fix to this coming soon. I think there will be, the Minneapolis City Council, I saw you pointed that out, did vote to defund their police department and replace it with, some other, community-based focused mechanism to ensure public safety. What that looks like yet, TBD. But, given this environment, given the time of year we're in, given where we are as a country right now with the virus and with the economy, I don't see where there's going to be change in the offing. And that being said, in absence of that, I think that protests nationwide are going to be a daily occurrence through the end of the year. I don't think that's outside of the realm, and especially after what I believe was the most horrific thing I have ever seen our national government do, which is fire upon its own citizens last Monday night in Lafayette Square, as the president was claiming to be the ally of all peaceful protesters, to fire tear gas on those same peaceful protesters. So for the express purpose of him and his cabinet and family full of second-rate James Bond villains to go have a photo op with, as we know, not his Bible, a Bible that apparently came out of Ivanka's purse in front of the Episcopal Church next to the White House. I've never seen the like, and right now, the two images that stick with me of 2020, I mean, coronavirus is neither one of them. One is George Floyd, and with that policeman's knee on his neck, and the other one is the President of the United States standing vacantly in front of an Episcopal church, awkwardly holding a Bible.
I mean, this country, unfortunately, is no stranger to state violence, particularly as regarding our black and brown brethren. It's state violence for the purpose of a photo opportunity is just one of those new lows the Trump administration just always manages to find. Although who knows, that may be topped by the Stephen Miller penned speech on race, which is just the absolute worst idea. And so therefore, of course, it's the one they went with. I'm sure whatever product they come out with will be something that the base loves. But it's tragic. I mean, it's interesting to see this operate at the national and state levels. I believe, wasn't the anti-lynching legislation finally moved out of the Senate? Is that correct, after Rand Paul held up that legislation?
I think that's so, yes.
Okay, all right. And as an aside, is there any way I could Venmo some cash over to Rand Paul's neighbor? You know what I'm talking about. But, see, his neighbor seems like a swell guy. But in terms of, so we have that at the national level. We have locally in Howard County here, I've seen a petition to end the agreement, I believe, between Howard County Public Schools and the Howard Police Department regarding having officers in the schools and replacing them with other sorts of resources that make it feel a bit less scary for a lot of the students who do feel as though they're perhaps threatened by the presence of police in the hallways. And apparently, I have had some interesting conversations lately regarding the sudden interest we're seeing in police body cams. Although I think a lot of that interest may be, we can't afford it anyway, so I'll say I'm for worn body cams, but not really, haha. But I do think that's a situation that nonetheless I think is a result of the citizen activism that we've seen and people that are crying out for some sort of reform. So, I mean, just to see this level of activity, I guess from that sense is encouraging.
Yeah, it is. It is helpful. I mean, every bit helps. I guess the regret I have, which I don't know what a quick cause or solution to this is that there doesn't seem to be much opportunity for anything comprehensive, on any level. I mean, the Congress is Congress until the fall, and then it's election season. The General Assembly is out, and Hogan is out busy, with his 2024, embryonic campaign, talking about how great Maryland's doing coronavirus. And whereas we can do county, some things on the local level in Howard County and other places, whereas I think there'll be a couple little appetizers, a couple, things to make the souls feel good. Big things still are going to have to wait to happen.
Yeah, agree. And who knows? Maybe Hogan will try to take credit for this. If cities of Maryland don't go through the tumult that other cities will, I'm sure he'll try to take credit for that. And what do you want to bet he'll run on some theme? What's the over under on the Maryland Miracle being a thing in 2024?
Oh my God, a Dukakis Redux miracle. And of course, he has Boyd Rutherford in there. So pivoting there for a bit to the 2020 elections.
Yep.
In the state of Maryland, as well as most of the rest of the Mid-Atlantic, we had our primary election June 2nd. It looks like we're finally getting some clarity as to who's winning. As of this moment, it looks like City Council President Brandon Scott has a narrow lead over former Mayor Sheila Pratt Dixon in Baltimore City. Nick Mosby, the husband of Maryland, the state's attorney, current state delegate, is winning in the race for city council president. And friend of this show, although he is yet to be on this show, Bill Henry is leading the race over the incumbent Joan Pratt for Baltimore City Comptroller. Not certain yet about many of the city council races. There are certainly leaders to report, but after the balloting was thrown out on election night, after the race in the first district showed that the challenger in the primary was beating the incumbent by a count of around 1,940 to, I believe, 17. I'm not holding a lot of faith in the city council balloting yet. Wake me when that's over. Also, in very non-unexpected fashion, Joe Biden won the Democratic primary. Of course, Trump beat Weld by, I believe, 90-10 in the Republican primary. All the sitting Congress people held serve. One interesting outcome in the first congressional district, former candidate for the office in 2018 on the Democratic side, named Allison Galbraith, has apparently won the Democratic primary, despite having dropped out of the race about 6 weeks prior. On April 22nd, she announced she was withdrawing, and she was throwing her support behind another candidate. Yet she's apparently won. So that's interesting. And then in good old Howard County, some fascinating Board of Elections results with some very fascinating primary winners in at least districts 4 and 5. So Jason, what's your take on what's going on in the electoral world?
Oh gosh. Well, first regarding cluster vote 2020, I really do think that the Board of Elections folks uh, who who mentioned that he was asleep when they pulled the results may not have been the best initial statement to make regarding that situation. Media training is always very helpful. But that was the thing that I think disturbed me the most because, like many political junkies, we're constantly wanting to get what are the numbers, what are the numbers, and for the numbers to be not reported as late as they were, that was distressing from a standpoint of democracy and transparency. And I was saddened to see a friend of the podcast, Natasha Gines in District 10. I haven't seen the latest numbers on that. Last I saw, she didn't appear to be in the running, but nonetheless, I think she ran from what I understood, and you were, I think, were on the ground a little bit more on that one. She ran a strong campaign, and she's definitely someone worth watching because she has a great story. She's a great communicator, and I think she's got a future ahead of her. And obviously, she attracted some very significant attention, both from Maryland folks as well as some national players outside of Maryland. So it'll be interesting to see where she goes.
Right.
And other things. I'm still in that too early to call mode regarding some of those Board of Education races. I posted some initial thoughts, I think the day after, maybe 2 days after Election Day. And some folks decided to chime in and say, well, you didn't write about, who's second. I'm like, well, the votes are still being counted. And I just, I can't influence anyone's vote now. The votes are cast. We just got to wait. My understanding is the canvass wraps up on June 12th. And then we should have a sense of what the final two finishers are in certain races. But as of right now, it looks like District 2, there's still a battle for second place. I think that non-friend of the show, LaPrette, is got like 150 vote lead or something like that over James Cecil. District 3's, well, that's done. But District 4, I think Susan Palmer has a fairly sizable 800 plus vote lead over Kirsten Combs. And District 5, it still looks like a pretty close battle between Cynthia Valancourt and Jean Ryan. Thank you for that second slot and frankly, that was a little bit of a surprise. I even understanding that Valancourt's been out for a couple of years. One would think that based on strength of name ID alone, she probably should have turned in a performance that would have got her at least a solid second, distance between her and 3. But I'm not sure whether that's a kudos to Ryan or whether it's a recognition that Dr. Help me out again. I'm having a name thing tonight. Lund who wound up winning by a fairly sizable margin in that seat. So again, that goes, I guess, to the strength of her organizing talents. But there were a few moderate surprises, but I guess I'm not willing to call this one over until we see the final votes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a little bit of a limb, and I think we're both in agreement that Palmer has the second spot in District 4.
Seems that way.
I'm going to go a little bit out on a limb, and I'm gonna think that Cindy Valancourt pulls it out in District 5 with these last ballots that have to be counted, including, I guess I understand, the true absentees. The people who actually, who went through like the more traditional absentee ballot process. This primary election was kind of like we all voted absentee, although we really didn't. And in news that will make in an opinion that will sadden us both, I'm gonna suggest that former thorn in the side of the legendary Marion Barry, LaPrette, no doubt buoyed by the support of Ms. Reds and the rest of the world of Pretlow, will emerge victorious over James Cecil. Very nice fellow, also a friend of the podcast. But I have a sneaky suspicion that the fact that LaPrette has already run for things here and is on a village board on the village board in Oakland Mills and has already announced that he's running for county council in 2022. That all of that, any press is good press, Jason, and that will move him to or maybe Baba buoy him to about to a narrow victory over Mr. Cecil.
Yeah, I guess yeah, probably. And I was encouraged, at least by the margin Antonia Barclay Watts had over him. And obviously Jolene Mosley ran a very strong campaign in her district. So those two names I just mentioned, I think, are looking pretty good to be new board members come the end of this year, which I think is at least one encouraging note. Although, and obviously, I think the race to watch beyond number 4 is going to be number 1 with Matthew Maillet playing the role of David and Christina Del Montno playing the role of a very well-funded Goliath from Republican interests. But that might be an interesting one to watch too. But obviously there was no primary, so we can't talk about their vote totals.
There is a strong rumor that the second most powerful student activist in the state of Maryland is coming to Howard County. Of course, we did interview on this very podcast the number 1 top-ranked most powerful student activist, Richard Deshay Elliott, on this podcast a few months ago. Mm-hmm. But Jake Burdett, formerly of the Salisbury University Young Democrats, and also I believe something happened where someone from Wicomico County had him thrown off of the Wicomico County Democratic Central Committee, or tried to. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. But Jake is apparently from Elbridge and is graduated and is moving back home and is going to be taking the helm of the Maillet campaign. So look out, because Pop Rocks have just been thrown into the warm, fizzy soda of the District 1 race.
And I love Pop Rocks. Those are the best.
Oh, the one is the awesomest. Speaking, and Pop Rocks are pink and red, not unlike the binding sites of the coronavirus model. So
best transition ever.
Possibly worst segue ever. Jason, Columbia has disappeared. As of today, 110,000 Americans have lost their lives due to the coronavirus. A population approximately the size of Columbia, Maryland, which, as we remember from the Democratic primary, has more people than South Bend, Indiana, whose former mayor finished like 3rd or 4th in the Democratic primary. Yeah. But people seem okay with that. People seem okay that now most states are in stage 2 and on their way to stage 3, which will still be social distancing. But hey, we can sit inside restaurants now. So, my view on this is that people have accepted that a couple of truths. One, that by and large, you have to be safe. You have to use your mask. You have to do other things. I'm going to discount the kookaburras because, Howard County being any judge, the 100 dingbats who showed up at that little meeting to talk about, reopening everything looked foolish compared to the 4,000 people down at the lakefront a week later about BLM. By the way, I did wind up playing the under on the over-under as to how many people were going to go to both the Reopen rally and the Black Lives Matter meeting rally in Columbia. The over-under was 1.5, and I played the under and I won.
That sounds about right. I might have been tempted to take the over and say three people, but one of them is maybe going to the mall and got lost. But no, yeah, the Venn diagram seemed like very distinct circles with that.
Very much
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
So we've kind of agreed that, people have kind of bought into this compact that, yeah, we have to do these things. I mean, you see, so many protesters wearing masks.
Mhm.
Even though, gathering in large groups and being in close to the same people for more than 15 minutes is a big no-no.
Mhm.
And that we seem to have accepted the fact that, some people are going to die, and that's the way it is. We're still sitting at home in the time of coronavirus. Are we missing something?
Is it some sort of societal numbness? I just don't know. I mean, on one hand, you see a lot of energy and a lot of, directed, particularly on the first topic we explored today. But simultaneously, it's almost seemed like coronavirus is now some sort of fact of life that we can somehow live with because the numbers maybe aren't as scary as they were back in March and April. I honestly don't know. We're still hearing, of course, about some countries in Israel, for example. Convict and Prime Minister Netanyahu has said he's needed to put the emergency brakes on reopening because it's starting to spike there. We're still seeing some numbers in other states, which are very troubling. I actually had some folks over this weekend from New York, and they were talking about how the fact that everything there until very, very recently, maybe a couple days ago, was pretty much on lockdown, far more intensively than we were down here in Maryland. So maybe it's a factor of the level of disruption to the day-to-day lives of people. Maybe it's the fact that a lot of folks in Columbia are privileged enough to be able to work from home, so they don't feel it as much. They can still run the errands. They can still go to the grocery store. Oh, good, we can go outside now at restaurants. I don't know. It just seems like people have, to a certain extent, just factored it into the day to day and are willing to accept it as well. We'll get over it at some point, I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, we've adapted to this.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure when that adaptation happened, but it just has suddenly come to be a thing. And I guess, the bread and circus of allowing things to open up and letting people get a little bit of elbow room and, go, not just go to the park, but like you said, go to the restaurant, go to their favorite stores. Not too long a time. They'll probably be going to the mall in about another month or maybe two.
Mhm.
But to go out and live as much as life as possible, that seems to be okay. On a not totally unrelated note, I did notice that the governor has allowed for the curbside and delivery of alcoholic beverages from restaurants to continue throughout the duration of this current state of emergency in the state of Maryland. And there is some sentiment to maybe even making being able to pick up your favorite cocktail and bring it home from your favorite restaurant be a thing, even after this is all over. What say you to that?
I,
30 years of Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
yeah,
It's all gone because now all of a sudden, I can get a margarita in a styrofoam cup. Yay! I only have a little bit to drive.
I mean, that seems like the kind of move. I mean, just, as someone who went to a Big Ten school starting the late 80s, the kind of move we used to pull off or try to pull off all the time, like, hey, guys, get this to go. And for which we were roundly scolded, unless there was, a bartender who, turned the other, turned the cheek. But yeah, it didn't seem like a good idea to let that be an ongoing thing when there are lots of other options. I don't know, maybe some liability concerns. I'm not sure if that's a good permanent solution to the to the issue of I mean, obviously we want the restaurants to do well, and obviously alcohol revenue is a significant portion of that for a lot of different restaurants. Um, as many as even some bloggers can tell you that alcohol sales are very important part of a lot of dining experiences.
And may I interject? I mean, restaurants are not projected to be going anywhere towards their current revenue project. I mean, their pre-COVID-19 revenues for some time, and along with that also goes the state's entertainment tax revenue and sales tax revenue. Yeah. So why not let people bring their 12-ounce bottle of smoking old-fashioned from Cured and 18th and 21st home? It's buying drinks for $15. Or is it 20? I don't know.
I don't know, but they do a great old-fashioned. But it does seem as though, I don't know. It seems like you can either have it there or have it at home. Do you really need it in the car? I don't know. It seems like a lot of temptation.
Well, my father, who passed 14 years ago today, I can remember quite well. He actually had a wet bar in his car. He had a 1971 Grand Prix, and in Popular Mechanics magazine in like about 78, he had what was called a car bar installed. And this thing went in the bottom of the glove, below the glove compartment, and it was a dispenser with like 5 or 6 buttons, and each button was attached to a reservoir of your favorite beverage. Now, for his 7-year-old son, he had like Coke, he had water, but he also had other things like gin, rum, and something called BODKA that I never knew how to pronounce, and then something else called BOUR dot. So, yeah, I can remember mixing him drinks and giving them to him as he drove.
The 70s were an interesting time that'll be very difficult to explain. Well, I gotta say, my dad had an AMC Gremlin. I'm not sure if he would have had the room for that full bar, but
yeah, it was a very compact little thing. I mean, it looked, it was very space efficient, but oh my God, it was a bar. Just take the 6-pack and drink it.
Well. And one wonders what sort of road trips were that invention be necessary, but I guess it was sort of just a different time then.
I wish I could say anything good happened out of having that thing in that man's car, but it
yeah.
So I'll just leave it at that. So I'd like to thank you, the viewer/listener, for watching this episode tonight. Jason, is there anything you have in closing?
I really got nothing. I got Curry waiting for me in the kitchen, so I think I'm good to go with my final thoughts.
You've got a lot of things happening. This is true. Oh, yeah. So come join us on Saturday, where our guest is going to be former Maryland State Delegate and former Maryland Secretary of Transportation, Bob Flanagan. What's he have to say? Ooh, won't you be interested? Till then, I'm Bill Woodcock.
I'm Jason Booms.
And you have been listening and watching another edition of Forward Maryland. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.